Hey, beautiful people. Today we will take a look at your light microscope or simply your microscope. Of course, your microscope, as what I've said during the introduction, your microscope, this will be our companion. Yes, this will be your companion, our companion during the laboratory classes. So your microscope, please note that the microscope, it comes from the Greek word micros, which means small, and scopin, which means to look at or to examine. With that being said, your microscope is an apparatus, or it is an instrument that is utilized or that will allow us or that allows us to study cells, tissues, microorganisms, crystals, and nanoscale structures. And or simply, the microscope is an instrument to utilize to examine objects that are too small to be seen by the naked eye. The microscope enlarges the image without affecting the actual size of the object being examined. Anyway, in the context of histology, as well as in the context of pathology, your compound microscope is utilized or the microscope is utilized to examine stained and unstained tissue sections. Anyhow, let's take a look at a brief history of your compound microscope here, or the microscope. In the 14th century, okay, in the 14th century, your what you call this, it was actually the first appearance of spectacles. Spectacles, eyeglasses. It was the first appearance of spectacles or eyeglasses in Italy. It marked actually an important step in the practical use of lenses. And please note, you have here your Hans and Zacharias Janssen. Okay, you have your Hans and Zacharias Janssen. They are Dutch. Okay, they are Dutch. They are from the Netherlands. Okay, they are father and son. Okay, they're father and son, okay, who created the first compound microscope. That is according to accounts. Okay, Hans and Zacharias Janssen in the 1590s, in 1590, they created the first compound microscope. And then here came the Robert Hooke. Okay, Robert Hooke here in 1665, accordingly, published Micrographia. Okay, he published Micrographia outlining his studies using the microscope, coining the term cells. Okay, yes, he utilized somewhat in his studies. Okay, he utilized microscope. Okay, somewhat he utilized microscope and came up or coined the term cells. But then here came Anthony van Leeuwenhoek in 1674. Yes, in 1674, he used a powerful single lens microscope to become the first person to observe bacteria and microorganism. And please note that this Anthony van Leeuwenhoek was he is actually regarded as the inventor of your microscope. Anyway, yes, he utilized your Anthony van Leeuwenhoek. He utilized convex lenses. But then for Hans and Zacharias Janssen, first compound microscope. Compound microscope, you have two lenses utilized. Okay, and then yes, let's jump to the contribution of Ernst Abbe. Yes, your Ernst Abbe, he developed the mathematical theory that links resolution to the wavelength of light. Okay, that is the contribution of Ernst Abbe. And he he was the first one to develop and use water on and oil immersion lenses. That is for the contribution of Ernst Abbe. You have Richard Zsigmondy. where he developed the ultramicroscope for observing extremely small particles below the wavelength of light. Okay, below the wavelength of light, below nanometer, below such nanometer. Okay, and then you have Ernst Ruska and Max Knoll, who developed the first electron microscope. They developed the first electron microscope. It was actually a transmission electron microscope. It was actually a transmission electron microscope. And please note that your TEMs, or your electron microscope, the light source is not a light. It is actually a beam of electrons. The light source is the beam of electrons. And yes, for Ernst Roscoe and Max Knoll, they invented the first electron microscope. That was in the year 1931. In the year 1931. And then you have your Fritz Zernike. Okay, they invented the phase contrast. I mean, he invented the phase contrast microscope. And this phase contrast microscope, it with the invention, it made it possible to study transparent biological material. Okay, your phase contrast microscope is actually utilized to study or to examine transparent biological material, or objects that have low refractile indices. And then you have your Gerd Binnig and Heinrich Roller. They invented your scanning tunneling microscope. That is in 1981. They invented your scanning tunneling microscope, which opened the door to a three-dimensional imaging at the atomic scale. At the atomic scale. This one is another form actually of an electron microscope. Yes, let's take a look at the path of light in the compound microscope. So, first is that the light coming from the illuminator, or coming from the light source, okay, it passes through the specimen and enters the objective, which magnifies the image, and the image is further magnified by the objective, by the eyepiece lens. Okay, please note that your compound microscope, it has two lenses system. You have the primary lens. The primary lens is, yes, your primary lens here is your objective lenses, and then your secondary lens here, or your secondary magnifying lens, is your uh, eyepiece. Okay, that is your secondary magnifying lens. The eyepiece, of course, the eyepiece further magnifies the intermediate image that is produced by the objective lenses, thereby producing a virtual image that is seen by the eyes. And please note that the image produced is inverted. It is inverted. Okay, it is inverted, it is upside down, and reversed left to right. Again, the image that is produced, the image that you see, okay, the image that you see at the eyepiece, it is inverted, it is upside down, and it is reversed left to right. Okay, so let's define some terms here. You have your parfocal. Your parfocal, it is a term, or it is a characteristic of a microscope wherein the image remains in focus when changing objective. Okay, let's say for example, coming from low power objective, you shift to high power objective, and if the image, or yes, if the image remains in focus, then you call it as parfocal. The microscope is parfocal. Okay, parfocal, it is a characteristic wherein the image remains in focus or the object remains in focus when changing the objective. If you change from one objective to another, okay, if you shift from uh what you call this, from lower uh, magnification to higher magnification. And then you have your par-centered. Par-centered, meaning the center of the field stays roughly centered when changing objective lenses. Okay, when you shift your objective lenses, the center of the field it stays roughly centered when you change from one objective to another objective, or when you shift. Let's say, for example, yes, you did already focused in HPO, in low power objective, but then you want a higher magnification, and then you shifted to high power objective. If the center of the field stays roughly centered, then you call it as par-centered. You have here an image showing you the path of light. Okay, showing you the path of light. Please note that for a conventional compound microscope, this is the setup. Okay, this is your eyepiece is located here. Okay, that is for a conventional compound microscope. The eyepiece is located here. The primary magnifying lens is located here. Okay, closer, of course, to the object being examined. Okay, so yes, you have here your path of light. This is, of course, your light source. Your light source. Okay, going up. Okay, this is your light source going up to your specimen, going to your objective lenses. Okay, going to your eyepiece. This is the path of light. Okay, and yes, this is your setup going up. Okay, let's define some terms here. Still, you have your magnification. Please note that your magnification, that is the process of enlarging or magnifying an object size without affecting its actual size. And yes, this one, it happens when we utilize the microscope. It happens when we utilize the microscope. It also happens when we utilize your magnifying glass. Actually, your magnifying glass is a microscope, is a simple microscope. Okay, magnification. Magnification, it also happens when we zoom in, when we take a picture, when we zoom in. So, anyway, again, when you say magnification, that is the process of enlarging or magnifying an object's size without affecting the actual size. You are producing, actually, in magnification, you are producing an image, an enlarged version, an enlarged image of the object. So imagine you have this one is the object. It is small, but then when you magnify, it looks larger. Okay, and then you have your total magnification. Your total magnification here is actually the product of your objective magnification multiplied with the eyepiece magnification. It is multiplied with the eyepiece magnification accordingly. So yes, you have actually your what call this your eyepiece magnification is typically 10 times. Okay, it is typically 10 times. And then your what is the other one? Your objective magnification, it actually differs because you have high, you have low, you have scanning. Those ones they differ in magnification. Okay, so total magnification is the product of objective. So you multiply, let's say for example, your high power objective, you multiply, it is 40 times magnification. You multiply it by 10 as the magnification of your eyepiece. 40 times 10, that is your total magnification. The product is your total magnification. And then you have your resolution. Your resolution here, it is the ability of your lens system to reveal fine detail. Or somewhat, this is the smallest distance between 2 points or lines, between 2 points or lines, your resolution, it is the smallest distance between 2 points or two lines at which they are distinguished as two separate entities that they can produce somewhat an image. Okay, that they can produce an image that is crisp and not pixelated. Okay, resolution, it is the ability of the lens system to reveal a fine detail or the smallest distance between 2 points or lines which they are distinguished as two separate entities. And yes, your resolution, it depends on the wavelength of light that is utilized and the numerical aperture of the objective lens. Okay, so let's take a look at that formula. This is actually the formula here. Okay, resolution is equal to 0.612 times the wavelength divided by numerical aperture, divided by the numerical aperture. Please note that numerical aperture is somewhat, yes, it is usually written, okay, it is usually written on the lenses. Okay, so yes, let's take a look at this. Your 0.612, this 0.612 here is constant. Okay, it is constant. So it is actually derived from Rayleigh criteria. Okay, this 0.612 describes the diffraction. It describes the diffraction limit of optical systems. Okay, it is derived from Rayleigh criteria. And then you have your wavelength. Wavelength, of course, the wavelength of light that is used for imaging. The wavelength of light that is used for imaging. Because, of course, you have your wavelengths of light. At this somewhat wavelength, it is for red. At this somewhat wavelength, it is for blue. At this somewhat wavelength, it is for orange. Okay, wavelengths are measured in nanometers. Please note that wavelength, they are measured in nanometers. Okay, the shortest in the visible light, the shortest wavelength is red. Okay, so yes, your wavelength is the wavelength of light that is used in imaging. This one is the wavelength of light used in imaging. And please note that the shorter the wavelength of light that is utilized, okay, shorter wavelengths will improve the resolution. The shorter the wavelength, the better the resolution accordingly. And then you have your numerical aperture. Your numerical aperture is a measure of how much light the objective can collect or the objective lens can collect. Okay, the numerical aperture is a measure of how much light the objective lens can collect. And please note that your higher numerical aperture is, I mean, it means higher or better resolution. Greater numerical aperture, greater resolution. Okay, greater numerical aperture, greater resolution. And as for the wavelength, the shorter the wavelength, okay, the better accordingly the resolution. So you have here the labels. Okay, the labels for your what do you call this? The labels actually for your objective lenses. Okay, this one is your objective. The tube length of, yes, the tube length, it is 160 millimeters. Okay, and 0.17 mm here is the thickness of the cover glass. And then, yes, it is an achromatic objective because there is another type of objective. But then, of course, we utilize an achromatic one. And then the magnification, it's 40 times. The band here, okay, the blue band means it's HPO. The blue ring or the blue band, okay, it means HPO. It is 40 times. And yes, the 0.65 here is the numerical aperture for your high power objective lenses. This is the numerical aperture for your high power objective lenses. Okay, so that is for your resolution. Please note that the quality or the detail or the image is affected by the wavelength and the numerical aperture. Okay, let's take a look at your magnifying parts or the parts of your compound microscope here. First, okay, we will take a look at your magnifying parts. So you have here, as what we said earlier, you have your compound microscope, you have two lens system here. You have your primary and the secondary one. The primary magnifying lens is the objective lenses, and the secondary is your eyepiece. Of course, the objective lens will provide an intermediate image or will magnify to provide an intermediate image, and then the eyepiece will further magnify to provide the final image. Okay, the eyepiece is usually 10 times magnification. It has usually a 10 times magnification. And present on the eyepiece, you have your diopter adjustment ring. Okay, you have your diopter adjustment ring. Please note this is the eyepiece. For a binocular, yes. In the laboratory, we utilize binocular compound microscope. Meaning binocular, dalawa po ang sisilipan. Okay? So in this one, these are the eyepiece. Okay, so each of this, they have 10, and this one has 10. Okay, 10x, 10 times magnification, and 10 times magnification. But then it does not make it 20. Okay, 10 pa rin. Okay, so present, you have your diopter adjustment ring, and then you have interpupillary distance adjustment or control. Your interpupillary distance adjustment, it is a slider or a hinge mechanism to match the distance between the user's eyes. Okay, you can actually, for this one, okay, the interpupillary distance adjustment, okay, it actually allows your two eyepieces here to move. Okay, you can actually move this one. You can actually move them closer. You can actually move them away from each other. Okay, yes. It will, what you call this interpupillary distance adjustment will compensate for the distance between the user's eyes, And then you have your diopter adjustment ring. You have your diopter adjustment ring here. It is the ring, it is actually located in one or both of your eyepieces set to compensate for differences in vision. Okay, to compensate for differences in vision between the two eyes. Because for someone, okay, those who has eyeglasses here, okay, they know this. Okay, those who have eyeglasses, sorry, those of you who have eyeglasses, you know this. Not, I mean, your vision, there are actually differences. Okay, have you heard of my left eye has the grade is 250 and the other one is 300, something like that. Okay, to compensate for differences in vision between the two eyes. Okay, so this is again your interpupillary, and this is your diopter adjustment. And then, of course, you have your objective lenses. Your objective lenses, they are the primary magnifying lenses, okay, that is mounted on the nosepiece. Please note, objective lenses, meaning marami po sila. Okay, usually 3 to 4. Usually 3 to four objective lenses are attached or mounted on the nose piece. So again, going back to that, okay, to the resolution, okay, the resolution worsens when, or yes, your resolution, as what I said earlier, your resolution improves, or yes, it improves when the wavelength is shorter, or when the wavelength decreases, and when the numerical aperture increases. Okay, so again, resolution improves if the wavelength decreases, and when the numerical aperture increases. While resolution worsens, okay, if the numerical aperture decreases and if the wavelength increases. Okay, yeah. So yes, those are actually your objective lenses. You have your objective lenses. Of course, you have there your nose piece, revolving nose piece or turret. Okay, so you have here a table showing you your different objective lenses. You have your scanning objectives, sorry, your scanning, your low power objective, your high power objective, your oil immersion objective. You have the magnification, okay, numerical aperture, and the band or the ring color of that one. Okay, and usually, as what we said earlier, for your eyepiece, okay, for the eyepiece lens, usually it has 10 times magnification. It has 10 times magnification. And please note that higher quality objective lenses, they are marked with their magnification as well as numerical aperture and the tube length as well as the cover slip thickness correction as what we showed earlier in the image of an objective lens. Okay? So please note that the higher the magnification number, okay, the higher the magnification number, the greater the feature or detail that is seen. Okay, again, the higher the magnification, the greater the feature or detail that is seen. Of course, comparing your 10 times, sorry, comparing your scanning, the 4x, 4 times, compare it with 100x, this one produces greater detail. Okay, this one produces greater detail comparing it with the Forex. Okay, so the numerical aperture for scanning, you have 0.10. Numerical aperture for low power objective, 0.25. And numerical aperture for high power objective, it's 0.65, and your numerical aperture for your oil immersion objective, it's 1.25. As for the band colors, okay, this one is conventional. Okay, it's common among your microscopes. Okay, it's the scanning, it's the band color is red or the ring color is red. The low power, the ring color is yellow. The high power, the ring color or the band color is blue. And your oil immersion, it has a white color. Please note that the scanning, the low power, and the high power, these are dry objectives. Please note these are dry objectives. Scanning, okay, these are dry objectives. This one, it requires, the oil immersion objective requires an oil. It requires an oil, okay, an immersion oil to improve the image. Okay, of course, you fill in the total magnification. Okay, eyepiece lens times the scanning lens times the eyepiece magnification times the scanning magnification. Okay, you fill it in here. Okay, that is for your objective lenses. Okay, your other parts, you have your body tube. Of course, The body tube maintains the correct optical distance between the objectives and the eyepieces. Okay, the body tube maintains the correct optical distance between the objectives and the eyepieces. Of course, again, you have here your objectives, and then you have here the eyepieces. Okay, the head, okay, the head or the head is otherwise known as the body tube. Okay, it is the upper portion that holds the eyepiece and it contains prisms that direct lights both to the eyes. And then you have the base. The base is the bottom support that stabilizes the microscope. And yes, it usually houses the electric illuminator and the power components. Okay, you have the illuminator here. You have the what they call this, the rheostat or the illuminator or the light adjustment knob, and then you have your power switch. Okay, that is for the base. And then you have the arm. Okay, the arm. Okay, this is the arm which holds the revolving nose piece. The arm, okay, it is a curved or an upright support that connects the base to the head. Okay, it connects the base to the head. And yes, okay, this arm here is actually the proper grip when carrying the microscope. Okay, and so this microscope actually it has a what they call this? It has a grip. Okay, and yes, it houses your revolving nose piece. It houses the revolving nose piece. Okay, it houses your revolving nose piece. And then, of course, you have your revolving nose piece. It holds the objectives in place. Or the arm is where the objective lenses are, or where the rotating nose piece is attached. And this revolving nose piece holds the objective lenses. Okay, this one, your revolving nose piece clicks into position so that the selective objective is aligned with the optical. Okay, that is your objective lenses. And then you have your, yes, your revolving nose piece. And then you have your stage. This one is the stage. Of course, the stage is a flat platform. Of course, this one is a flat platform where the slide is placed. Okay, of course, it has a central hole. Okay, meaning there is a hole, may butas, that allows light to pass through the specimen. Okay, the stage is where the slide is placed. And then you have your stage clips. Okay, there are actually your stage clips. Okay, or yes, your stage clips. They hold the slide in place. And yes, please note you have your mechanical stage adjustment knob. Your mechanical stage adjustment knob. Please note that your mechanical stage adjustment knob, they are actually two knobs. Okay, you have your X control knob and the Y control knob. Okay, X and Y control knob. Okay, for the what you call this, for the top one, okay, this portion, please note, look at this. This portion, it moves. Okay, it is for forward and backward movement. Okay, this is actually the Y knob. Okay, this is actually the Y knob. Okay, this is actually the Y knob. Okay, the top knob or the Y knob is for forward and backward movement. And then the other one, the bottom knob, okay, the bottom knob here is for left and right movement. This is the X. Okay, this one is your X knob, and it is for left and right movement. For left and right movement. Okay, so your X and Y axis knobs, okay, for left and right and forward and backward movement respectively, X and Y. Okay, and then you have your course adjustment knob. You have your course adjustment knob. Okay, by the way, this is your, again, this is your X. I mean, sorry, this is your Y knob. And then you have the X knob. And then you have your course adjustment knob. This is your course adjustment knob. It is for large scale focusing. Okay, it is a larger knob. Okay, this is the larger knob that is used for rapid large scale focusing, and it is primarily used with low power objectives. It is used primarily in conjunction with low power objectives. Okay, and then you have your fine adjustment knob. Your fine adjustment knob, this is your fine adjustment knob, by the way. Look at this. This is your fine adjustment knob. It is a smaller knob that is used for precise focusing. Okay, to provide a finer image. Okay, and is usually used at higher magnification, for higher magnification objectives. Okay, and then you have the illuminator. The illuminator, okay, the illuminator or the light source is usually an LED. For the modern ones, it is usually an LED, light emitting diode. Okay, or for older microscopes, okay, halogen bulb, or for your non-electric microscope, okay, light, you use the mirror. Anyway, okay, that is for your illuminator. And then you have the rheostat. The rheostat, this one controls the light intensity. It controls the brightness or the light, the brightness, okay, of the light, or it controls the light coming from the illuminator. Then you have your condenser. Your condenser, they are actually a lens system, but then they are not magnifying lenses. Okay, they are not for magnification. Okay, yeah, they are not for magnification. Your condenser here is a lens located beneath the stage, and what does it do? It collects light from the illuminator and focuses it into a cone onto the specimen. Okay, and please note that proper condenser height is essential for optimal resolution and contrast. Again, your condenser, it focuses light to the specimen. It focuses light to the specimen. While your iris diaphragm, it is actually an aperture. It is a diaphragm. Okay, it is an adjustable opening that regulates the diameter of light beam. Or yes, it regulates the diameter of light beam, or it can control contrast, depth of field, and the resolution. Okay, because of course, okay, it regulates the diameter of light beam. Okay, you can close it, or you can, yes, you can, you can open it wide because it's an aperture. Okay, you can open it wide, or you can, what do you call this, you can somewhat close it. Okay, that is for the diaphragm. Okay, it regulates the diameter of light beam that enters the condenser. Okay, let's take a look again at the light path, or the path of light in the microscope. So please note again that light is emitted from the illuminator. It is emitted by the illuminator. And this light passes through the condenser and iris diaphragm. It passes through the condenser and iris diaphragm and forms a controlled cone light. Of course, the condenser forms a controlled or focuses, it forms a cone of light. And then the light travels, okay, light travels through the stage or the stage aperture and the specimen. Okay, the specimen, of course, will absorb the light. Okay, it will absorb the light and will somewhat scatter other lights. The objective lenses will collect the light. Okay, the objective lenses will collect the light and forms a magnified real intermediate image. Okay, and prisms in the binocular head will direct the light. Okay, prisms here will direct the light to both the eyepieces. Okay, to both the eye pieces. And the eyepiece lenses will further magnify the intermediate image, producing a virtual image that the eye perceived as enlarged. Okay, the eyepiece again, the eyepiece will further magnify the intermediate image produced by the objective lens. Okay, thereby producing a virtual image that the eye perceived as enlarged. Please note it is enlarged. You enlarge the object with, you provided an enlarged image without affecting the size of the object that is being examined. So let's take a look at the basic operation of the compound microscope. Okay, for some of you, you know how to operate the microscope, but then for some who haven't tried it yet, okay, and so please take a look at this one. Okay, this is just for the basic operation. Please note you need to plug in and turn on. Okay, plug in and turn on the microscope because of course we utilize electric microscope here. Compound electric microscope, not electron microscope, ha? Okay, and yes, you need to turn on the switch and plug and turn on the switch. And please start with the lowest power objective. Start with either 4 times, 4x or 10x. Okay, scanning or low power objective. You should click them into place. Okay, and then after that, you place the slide on the stage. You place the slide on the stage, and then you secure. You secure it using the stage clip. You secure it using the stage clip. Okay. Uh Cover slip should be placed in the slide. And using the course adjustment knob, you manipulate the course adjustment knob to bring the stage upward, upward. Okay, you bring the stage upward while looking from the side until until the slide is close to the objective. Okay, until the slide is close to the objective. Okay, do not use, okay, do not, okay, do not pull, okay, do not pull up the, what you call this, do not pull up the stage itself. You use the course adjustment knob. Okay, again, while, okay, while looking from the side, okay, you, what you call this, you bring up the stage close to the objective using the course adjustment knob. And then look through the eyepiece. Okay, look through the eyepieces and slowly lower the stage with the course knob until the image appears. Okay, look through the eyepieces and slowly lower the stage with the coarse adjustment knob until the image appears. And sharpen the image using the fine adjustment knob. Sharpen the image using the fine adjustment knob. And okay, you can adjust the interpupillary distance and the diopter so both eyes will see a single sharp image. And of course, you center the specimen and adjust the iris diaphragm and condenser for best contrast and brightness. And please note that when changing to a higher objective, the microscope should remain nearly in focus because our microscope, they are parfocal in nature. They are parfocal in nature. Again, when changing to a higher objective, the microscope should remain nearly in focus because again, our microscopes, the microscopes that we utilize in the laboratory, they are parfocal in nature. They are parfocal in nature. Okay, and please note, use the fine adjustment knob. Use the fine adjustment knob at 40x, 40 times magnification, or 100 magnification, or using HPO and using HPO, using high power objective and oil immersion objective. Okay, please note that for the 100 times, for the 100 magnification oil immersion objective, you need to, because it is not a dry one, it is oil. Okay, it utilizes, it requires oil immersion, oil, it requires oil here. Okay, you place a drop of immersion oil on the cover slip. Okay, and carefully swing. Okay, carefully swing the oil immersion lens into place so that it contacts or touches the oil. So that it contacts or touches the oil. And then, of course, you use the fine adjustment knob to focus. Okay, again, please note if this one is required lang naman. Okay, please note that the oil is utilized for the oil immersion objective only. Okay, the oil is utilized for oil immersion objective only. It should not be utilized, again, it should not be utilized for the LPO, for the HPO, and for the scanning objectives. So you have here a labeled image of a compound microscope. Okay, you have your ocular lens or the eyepiece. You have your diopter adjustment ring. You have your interpupillary. Okay, you have the head. You have the nose space. You have the arm. Okay, you have your objective lenses. Please note objective lenses because they are plural, they are more than two. Okay, more than one. Okay, objective lenses. If your answer is objective lens, I will not accept it. It should be objective lenses. Okay, objective lenses. Then you have the stage clip. Okay, your aperture, you have your condenser, you have your illuminator, you have the light source, brightness switch, or sorry, brightness adjustment knob, or the rheostat, or the light intensity adjustment. You have the base, okay, that houses the electronics, okay, and then you have your stage controls, you have the Y knob, the X knob, okay, fine adjustment knob, coarse adjustment knob, okay, there should be a knob. Okay, if you were asked, there should be a knob. Okay, mechanical stage. Okay, this is a mechanical stage. You have the arm, the head. Okay, okay, so yes, let's take a look at your microscope techniques or your microscopy. Again, when we say microscopy, that is, they are the techniques. Okay, when of course you say microscope, that is the object. Okay, so you have your bright field microscopy. This is actually the standard or the most common form of light microscopy used using the binocular compound microscope. And How is this one? The light is passed or reflected. The light is passed or reflected off a specimen. So, for the principle of bright field microscopy, the light passes directly through the specimen and going to the objectives. The structures appear darker against a bright background because they absorb or they scatter some of the light. Okay, yes. So the sample here, okay, the appearance is the appearance of the object appears dark. Okay, or yes, the object appears dark against a bright background. You have the field is bright, the object is dark. Okay, that is for bright field microscopy. Okay, some lights are absorbed by the stains, pigmentation, or dense areas to provide contrast. Okay, making them darker, comparing it to the field. Okay, comparing it to the field. Okay, so again, as for the appearance, your stain samples, they show a contrast. Okay, unstained samples, they often have low contrast and appear nearly transparent. Okay, of course, your bright field microscopy is utilized in, yes, we utilize them in histology, in histopathology, in cytology, such. Okay, please note that bright field microscopy has or it cannot be used for objects that has a poor or that has a very low refractile index. Okay, that is for your bright field microscopy. This is actually an image that is produced using a bright field microscope. Okay, so yes, it is a stained one. As what I said earlier, the object takes up some of the light. Okay, or the stain takes up some of the light, providing contrast. Of course, you have here the background here, this one, the background is bright. Okay, the background is bright. Of course, this is the image, the object. You have here your dark field microscopy. Your dark field microscopy utilizes a special condenser that will block the central light rays. It will block the central light rays so that uh, somewhat only the oblique lights will hit the sample. And please note that light scattered by the specimen will enter the objective. Okay, so in dark field microscopy, the specimen or the sample appears bright against a dark background. Okay, it appears dark. Sorry, the specimen has a dark back. I mean, yes, in dark field microscopy, the background is dark and the specimen is bright. Okay, and yes, it is utilized for stained and unstained transparent samples. It is utilized for stained and unstained transparent samples. Okay, it is utilized again for observing unstained living microorganisms like Treponema pallidum. Okay, thin microorganisms, thin bacteria. This is actually an image that is produced from a dark field microscope. It is produced from a dark field microscope. Phase contrast microscopy. Please note that there are small phase shifts in this one. So this small phase shifts in the light passing through a transparent sample, they are converted to a contrast changes. They are converted into a contrast changes. And yes, this phase contrast microscopy enhances contrast of transparent and colorless objects by influencing the optical path of light. Okay, and for this one, it can be utilized to visualize living unstained cells, and transparent specimens with low or samples with low refractile index. It can show components of a cell or bacteria. That is for your phase contrast microscopy. This one is an image that is produced from a phase contrast microscope. Okay, so comparing the images produced from bright field, dark field, and phase contrast. Okay, this one is the image produced from a bright field microscope, image from a dark field microscope, and image produced using the phase contrast one. Polarizing microscopy utilizes plane polarized light. This is actually a light that vibrates in a single plane. Okay, it has components, it has a polarizer and an analyzer. The polarizer is placed below the specimen, and the analyzer is located or placed above the sample. Analyzer is placed above the sample. So, in polarizing microscopy, your birefringent materials will rotate or alter the polarized light, allowing it to pass through the analyzer, allowing the polarized light to pass through the analyzer. By the way, when you say birefringent materials, those are materials with different refractive indices along different axes. Okay, so yes, in polarizing microscopy, okay, you can have a dark image for isotropic materials, and you can have birefringent images for anisotropic materials. Your birefringent images, they appear bright or colored against a dark background. And yes, your polarizing microscopy, it is utilized for identifying crystals like uric acid crystals, calcium oxalate, or cholesterol crystals, minerals, fibers, amyloids, okay, amyloids, and others. Other structures like muscle, collagen, or others accordingly. Okay, you have here an image produced from a polarizing microscopy. Of course, these are birefringent. Okay, these are anisotropic. These are birefringent materials or objects. Of course, the what you call this, the background is dark. The background is dark. Then you have your fluorescence microscopy. Okay, in fluorescence microscopy, your samples are labeled with fluorescent dyes. Okay, your samples are labeled with fluorescent dyes or fluorophores or okay, naturally fluorescent molecules. Okay, again, your samples are labeled with fluorescent dyes or naturally fluorescent molecules. So you need to excite first. Okay, you need to excite first the specimen. How? High energy, okay, high energy light is focused or directed to the specimen. Okay, high energy light is directed to the specimen. And what happens to this high energy light? Or yes, high energy, usually shorter wavelength. Okay, what happens to this high energy light? The fluorophores, okay, or yes, the fluorophores or the fluorescent materials, the fluorophores or the fluorescent dyes or fluorescent materials, they absorb this light. Okay, they absorb the light. Okay, they absorb the light. Okay, and then, okay, in return, okay, after absorption of the light, in return, the sample will release or will emit the light of a longer wavelength. Okay, 'di ba? What happens is, okay, you need to excite. Okay, you need to excite you need to excite. You need to what do you call this? you need high energy light of usually shorter wavelength. Okay, your light is high energy light of shorter wavelength that is absorbed by the fluorescent dye, by the fluorophore. Then after some time, in return, this sample with fluorescent dye will emit the light of a longer wavelength. Will emit light of a longer wavelength. Okay, so what happens there? There are actually emission filters that will block excitation light so that only the fluorescent signal reaches the eye or the camera. Okay, so for the appearance, the image that you will see, okay, you have a brightly glowing structure. So, okay, brightly glowing structure. Okay, the color will depend on the fluorophore that you utilize. The color will depend on the fluorophore that you utilize. And yes, for fluorescence microscopy, it only allows observation of the specific structures that are labeled for fluorescence. This one is an image captured from a fluorescent microscope. Again, the color, okay, the color will depend on the type of fluorescent dye utilized. Okay, you have your electron microscopes. Of course, they use a beam of accelerated electrons as the light source, in contrast to visible light by your bright field and your other microscopy that we learned. Okay, so anyhow, your electron microscope has a higher resolving power due to the shorter electron wavelength. Okay, they have shorter electron wavelength, comparing it with the nanometer wavelength of your visible light. Okay, so you have two types. You have your transmission electron microscope and then your scanning. Okay, for your TEM, your transmission electron microscope, of course, is what we said, they utilize an electron beam. Okay, this electron beam will pass through the ultra-thin sample. And what happens to this electron beam? The electrons are scattered differently by their denser regions. And of course, magnetic lenses will focus the beam to form an image. Okay, so the in TEM, in transmission electron microscope, the image is grayscale. Okay, yes. Okay, high resolution. Okay, please note that in TEM, it can what they call this, it can capture the internal ultrastructure. It can capture the internal ultrastructure of the cells, of your viruses, of your organelles, and as well as your macromolecular complexes. Okay, so in TEM, in your transmission electron microscope, magnifications can reach over to a million times. Okay, can reach over to a million times. And then you have your scanning electron microscope. Okay, your scanning electron microscope or your SEM. Okay, it utilizes electron beams that will scan the surface of the specimen. So, by the way, your TEM produces a two-dimensional view or two-dimensional image. For your scanning electron microscope, it scans the surface of the sample, producing a three-dimensional surface view. Okay, with of course a somewhat great depth of field. So in scanning electron microscope, you can observe the surface morphology of your cells, of the tissues, as well as your other objects. That is for your SEM. Okay. And so again, for your electron microscopy, okay, you can, okay, for the resolution, it can reach as low as, or yes, it can examine, or yes, you can examine as small as zero point 0.1 nanometers here. Okay, somewhat at the atomic level for some advanced instruments. Okay, so that is your microscope. So I guess let's end here. Let's continue some other time. And this has been Gael, reminding you to live fully, love deeply, laugh often, keep learning, and never forget to enjoy the ride. And as you move forward, may you always choose curiosity over fear, kindness over convenience, and growth over comfort. Celebrate your small victories. Honor your quiet moments and trust that every step, no matter how uncertain, shapes the story you are meant to tell. The world is wide, your time is precious, and your journey is uniquely yours. So go make it extraordinary. Again, this has been Gael. Thank you. Thank you so much, and see you around.